Hiking.
She went hiking in the mountains every weekend. She went hiking in the mountains every weekend. The hiking trail was well marked and easy to follow. The hiking trail was well marked and easy to follow. They planned a hiking trip to the national park. They planned a hiking trip to the national park. They checked the rope for any signs of wear. She loved camping under the stars. She loved camping under the stars. The camping site had facilities for tents and caravans. The camping site had facilities for tents and caravans. They went camping by the lake during the summer. They went camping by the lake during the summer.
Tent.
She pitched the tent in a sheltered spot. She pitched the tent in a sheltered spot. The tent was waterproof and kept them dry during the rain. The tent was waterproof and kept them dry during the rain. They packed the tent carefully after the camping trip. They packed the tent carefully after the camping trip.
Backpack.
She carried a heavy backpack filled with camping gear. She carried a heavy backpack filled with camping gear. The backpack had comfortable straps and good support. The backpack had comfortable straps and good support. They packed their backpacks for the hiking adventure. They packed their backpacks for the hiking adventure.
Sleeping bag.
She unrolled her sleeping bag inside the tent. She unrolled her sleeping bag inside the tent. The sleeping bag kept her warm during the cold night. The sleeping bag kept her warm during the cold night. They chose a lightweight sleeping bag for summer camping. They chose a lightweight sleeping bag for summer camping.
Campfire.
She sat around the campfire telling stories. She sat around the campfire telling stories. The campfire provided warmth and light in the darkness. The campfire provided warmth and light in the darkness. They extinguished the campfire completely before going to sleep. They extinguished the campfire completely before going to sleep.
Fishing.
She went fishing early in the morning. She went fishing early in the morning. The fishing trip was peaceful and relaxing. The fishing trip was peaceful and relaxing. They caught several fish during their fishing expedition. They caught several fish during their fishing expedition.
Fishing rod.
She cast the fishing rod into the river. She cast the fishing rod into the river. The fishing rod was lightweight and easy to handle. The fishing rod was lightweight and easy to handle. They assembled the fishing rod before starting to fish. They assembled the fishing rod before starting to fish.
Bait.
She put bait on the hook to attract fish. She put bait on the hook to attract fish. The bait was fresh and smelled appealing to the fish. The bait was fresh and smelled appealing to the fish. They used worms as bait for their fishing trip. They used worms as bait for their fishing trip.
Cycling.
She enjoyed cycling through the countryside. She enjoyed cycling through the countryside. The cycling route took them through beautiful landscapes. The cycling route took them through beautiful landscapes. They went cycling along the coastal path. They went cycling along the coastal path.
Bicycle.
She rode her bicycle to work every day. She rode her bicycle to work every day. The bicycle had gears for climbing hills. The bicycle had gears for climbing hills. They parked their bicycles outside the cafe. They parked their bicycles outside the cafe.
Kayaking.
She went kayaking on the calm lake. She went kayaking on the calm lake. The kayaking adventure took them down the river. The kayaking adventure took them down the river. They learned kayaking techniques at the water sports center. They learned kayaking techniques at the water sports center.
Canoeing.
She enjoyed canoeing on the peaceful river. She enjoyed canoeing on the peaceful river. The canoeing trip lasted for several hours. The canoeing trip lasted for several hours. They paddled the canoeing boat together. They paddled the canoeing boat together.
Rafting.
She went whitewater rafting for the first time. She went whitewater rafting for the first time. The rafting experience was thrilling and exciting. The rafting experience was thrilling and exciting. They wore life jackets for safety during rafting. They wore life jackets for safety during rafting.
Swimming.
She went swimming in the lake every morning. She went swimming in the lake every morning. The swimming area was marked with buoys. The swimming area was marked with buoys. They enjoyed swimming in the natural pool. They enjoyed swimming in the natural pool.
Surfing.
She learned to surf during her holiday at the beach. She learned to surf during her holiday at the beach. The surfing conditions were perfect with good waves. The surfing conditions were perfect with good waves. They rented surfing boards for the day. They rented surfing boards for the day.
Surfboard.
She carried her surfboard down to the beach. She carried her surfboard down to the beach. The surfboard was perfect for beginners. The surfboard was perfect for beginners. They waxed the surfboard before going into the water. They waxed the surfboard before going into the water.
Rock climbing.
She went rock climbing at the local climbing wall. She went rock climbing at the local climbing wall. The rock climbing route was challenging but rewarding. The rock climbing route was challenging but rewarding. They used safety equipment for rock climbing. They used safety equipment for rock climbing.
Climbing harness.
She put on her climbing harness before starting to climb. She put on her climbing harness before starting to climb. The climbing harness was essential for safety. The climbing harness was essential for safety. They checked their climbing harnesses before each climb. They checked their climbing harnesses before each climb.
Birdwatching.
She went birdwatching early in the morning. She went birdwatching early in the morning. The birdwatching expedition was peaceful and educational. The birdwatching expedition was peaceful and educational. They used binoculars for birdwatching. They used binoculars for birdwatching.
Binoculars.
She used binoculars to spot birds in the distance. She used binoculars to spot birds in the distance. The binoculars had powerful magnification for wildlife viewing. The binoculars had powerful magnification for wildlife viewing. They brought binoculars for the nature walk. They brought binoculars for the nature walk.
Picnic.
She organized a picnic in the park. She organized a picnic in the park. The picnic basket was filled with delicious food. The picnic basket was filled with delicious food. They spread a blanket on the grass for the picnic. They spread a blanket on the grass for the picnic.
Barbecue.
She lit the barbecue for the outdoor party. She lit the barbecue for the outdoor party. The barbecue was ready for grilling the meat. The barbecue was ready for grilling the meat. They cooked burgers on the barbecue. They cooked burgers on the barbecue.
Wildlife.
She observed the wildlife from a safe distance. She observed the wildlife from a safe distance. The wildlife in the national park was diverse and fascinating. The wildlife in the national park was diverse and fascinating. They took photographs of the wildlife during their walk. They took photographs of the wildlife during their walk.
Trail.
She followed the trail through the forest. She followed the trail through the forest. The trail was marked with colored signs. The trail was marked with colored signs. They walked along the coastal trail for miles. They walked along the coastal trail for miles.
Mountain.
She climbed the mountain with her friends. She climbed the mountain with her friends. The mountain peak offered stunning views. The mountain peak offered stunning views. They reached the top of the mountain after hours of climbing. They reached the top of the mountain after hours of climbing.
Lake.
She swam in the lake during the hot afternoon. She swam in the lake during the hot afternoon. The lake was calm and perfect for kayaking. The lake was calm and perfect for kayaking. They set up camp near the lake. They set up camp near the lake.
River.
She followed the river downstream. She followed the river downstream. The river was fast-flowing after the heavy rain. The river was fast-flowing after the heavy rain. They crossed the river using a bridge. They crossed the river using a bridge.
Forest.
She walked through the forest enjoying the peace and quiet. She walked through the forest enjoying the peace and quiet. The forest was home to many different species of trees. The forest was home to many different species of trees. They got lost in the dense forest and had to use a map. They got lost in the dense forest and had to use a map.
Beach.
She spent the day at the beach swimming and sunbathing. She spent the day at the beach swimming and sunbathing. The beach was crowded with families enjoying the sunshine. The beach was crowded with families enjoying the sunshine. They walked along the beach collecting shells. They walked along the beach collecting shells.
Compass.
She used a compass to navigate through the wilderness. She used a compass to navigate through the wilderness. The compass helped them find their way back to camp. The compass helped them find their way back to camp. They always carried a compass on hiking trips. They always carried a compass on hiking trips.
Map.
She consulted the map to plan their route. She consulted the map to plan their route. The map showed all the trails and landmarks. The map showed all the trails and landmarks. They unfolded the map to find their current location. They unfolded the map to find their current location.
Water bottle.
She filled her water bottle from the stream. She filled her water bottle from the stream. The water bottle was essential for staying hydrated. The water bottle was essential for staying hydrated. They carried several water bottles for the long hike. They carried several water bottles for the long hike.
Torch.
She used a torch to light the way in the dark. She used a torch to light the way in the dark. The torch was powerful and had a long battery life. The torch was powerful and had a long battery life. They packed a torch for the evening camping activities. They packed a torch for the evening camping activities.
First aid kit.
She always carried a first aid kit on outdoor adventures. She always carried a first aid kit on outdoor adventures. The first aid kit contained bandages and antiseptic. The first aid kit contained bandages and antiseptic. They used the first aid kit to treat a minor cut. They used the first aid kit to treat a minor cut.
Insect repellent.
She applied insect repellent before going into the woods. She applied insect repellent before going into the woods. The insect repellent kept the mosquitoes away. The insect repellent kept the mosquitoes away. They brought insect repellent for the camping trip. They brought insect repellent for the camping trip.
Sunscreen.
She applied sunscreen before spending time in the sun. She applied sunscreen before spending time in the sun. The sunscreen protected her skin from harmful UV rays. The sunscreen protected her skin from harmful UV rays. They reapplied sunscreen throughout the day. They reapplied sunscreen throughout the day.
Hiking boots.
She wore sturdy hiking boots for the mountain trek. She wore sturdy hiking boots for the mountain trek. The hiking boots provided good ankle support. The hiking boots provided good ankle support. They broke in their new hiking boots before the long hike. They broke in their new hiking boots before the long hike.
Life jacket.
She wore a life jacket while kayaking on the river. She wore a life jacket while kayaking on the river. The life jacket was essential for water safety. The life jacket was essential for water safety. They put on life jackets before getting into the boat. They put on life jackets before getting into the boat.
Paddle.
She used the paddle to steer the kayak. She used the paddle to steer the kayak. The paddle was lightweight and easy to handle. The paddle was lightweight and easy to handle. They paddled in sync using their paddles. They paddled in sync using their paddles.
To hike.
She decided to hike to the mountain summit. She decided to hike to the mountain summit. They hiked for several hours before reaching the campsite. They hiked for several hours before reaching the campsite. We plan to hike the entire trail next weekend. We plan to hike the entire trail next weekend.
To camp.
She wanted to camp under the stars. She wanted to camp under the stars. They camped by the river for 3 nights. They camped by the river for 3 nights. We will camp in the national park this summer. We will camp in the national park this summer.
To fish.
She learned to fish from her grandfather. She learned to fish from her grandfather. They fished in the lake every morning. They fished in the lake every morning. We can fish from the pier or the boat. We can fish from the pier or the boat.
To cycle.
She decided to cycle to the beach instead of driving. She decided to cycle to the beach instead of driving. They cycled along the coastal path for miles. They cycled along the coastal path for miles. We will cycle through the countryside this weekend. We will cycle through the countryside this weekend.
To swim.
She loved to swim in the ocean. She loved to swim in the ocean. They swam across the lake to reach the other side. They swam across the lake to reach the other side. We can swim in the pool or the natural spring. We can swim in the pool or the natural spring.
To surf.
She learned to surf during her holiday in Australia. She learned to surf during her holiday in Australia. They surfed the waves for hours. They surfed the waves for hours. We will surf at the beach if the conditions are good. We will surf at the beach if the conditions are good.
To climb.
She wanted to climb the highest peak in the region. She wanted to climb the highest peak in the region. They climbed the rock face using ropes and harnesses. They climbed the rock face using ropes and harnesses. We need to climb carefully to avoid accidents. We need to climb carefully to avoid accidents.
Snorkelling.
She went snorkeling to see the colorful fish. She went snorkeling to see the colorful fish. The snorkeling equipment included a mask and snorkel. The snorkeling equipment included a mask and snorkel. They enjoyed snorkeling in the clear tropical waters. They enjoyed snorkeling in the clear tropical waters.
Wild camping.
She preferred wild camping to staying at organized campsites. She preferred wild camping to staying at organized campsites. The wild camping spot was remote and peaceful. The wild camping spot was remote and peaceful. They practiced leave no trace principles during wild camping. They practiced leave no trace principles during wild camping.
Stargazing.
She went stargazing in the countryside away from city lights. She went stargazing in the countryside away from city lights. The stargazing was best on clear, moonless nights. The stargazing was best on clear, moonless nights. They used a telescope for stargazing. They used a telescope for stargazing.
Photography.
She practiced nature photography during her walks. She practiced nature photography during her walks. The photography captured the beauty of the landscape. The photography captured the beauty of the landscape. They took photography equipment on their outdoor adventures. They took photography equipment on their outdoor adventures.
Wildlife watching.
She went wildlife watching at dawn when animals were most active. She went wildlife watching at dawn when animals were most active. The wildlife watching required patience and silence. The wildlife watching required patience and silence. They saw deer and foxes during their wildlife watching session. They saw deer and foxes during their wildlife watching session.
Caving.
She went caving to explore underground caves. She went caving to explore underground caves. The caving expedition required special equipment and training. The caving expedition required special equipment and training. They wore helmets and headlamps for caving. They wore helmets and headlamps for caving.
Abseiling.
She tried abseiling down the cliff face. She tried abseiling down the cliff face. The abseiling experience was thrilling and challenging. The abseiling experience was thrilling and challenging. They learned abseiling techniques from an experienced guide. They learned abseiling techniques from an experienced guide.
Bouldering.
She practiced bouldering at the indoor climbing center. She practiced bouldering at the indoor climbing center. The bouldering route was short but technically difficult. The bouldering route was short but technically difficult. They used crash pads for safety during bouldering. They used crash pads for safety during bouldering.
Canoe.
She paddled the canoe across the lake. She paddled the canoe across the lake. The canoe was stable and easy to maneuver. The canoe was stable and easy to maneuver. They rented a canoe for the afternoon. They rented a canoe for the afternoon.
Kayak.
She launched the kayak into the water. She launched the kayak into the water. The kayak was designed for whitewater adventures. The kayak was designed for whitewater adventures. They stored the kayak on the roof of their car. They stored the kayak on the roof of their car.
Rope.
She used a strong rope for rock climbing. She used a strong rope for rock climbing. The rope was essential for safety during the climb. The rope was essential for safety during the climb. They checked the rope for any signs of wear. They checked the rope for any signs of wear.
Carabiner.
She clipped the carabiner to her harness. She clipped the carabiner to her harness. The carabiner was strong and reliable for climbing. The carabiner was strong and reliable for climbing. They used multiple carabiners for the safety system. They used multiple carabiners for the safety system.
Helmet.
She always wore a helmet when cycling. She always wore a helmet when cycling. The helmet protected her head in case of a fall. The helmet protected her head in case of a fall. They wore helmets for all outdoor activities involving risk. They wore helmets for all outdoor activities involving risk.
Wetsuit.
She put on her wetsuit before going into the cold water. She put on her wetsuit before going into the cold water. The wetsuit kept her warm while surfing. The wetsuit kept her warm while surfing. They rented wetsuits for their scuba diving trip. They rented wetsuits for their scuba diving trip.
Snorkel.
She used a snorkel to breathe while swimming face down. She used a snorkel to breathe while swimming face down. The snorkel allowed her to observe underwater life. The snorkel allowed her to observe underwater life. They bought new snorkels for their holiday. They bought new snorkels for their holiday.
Diving mask.
She adjusted her diving mask for a tight seal. She adjusted her diving mask for a tight seal. The diving mask provided clear vision underwater. The diving mask provided clear vision underwater. They cleaned their diving masks after each use. They cleaned their diving masks after each use.
Fins.
She put on her fins before entering the water. She put on her fins before entering the water. The fins helped her swim more efficiently. The fins helped her swim more efficiently. They chose the right size fins for their feet. They chose the right size fins for their feet.
Anchor.
She dropped the anchor to stop the boat drifting. She dropped the anchor to stop the boat drifting. The anchor held the boat securely in place. The anchor held the boat securely in place. They raised the anchor when it was time to leave. They raised the anchor when it was time to leave.
Buoy.
She swam between the buoys marking the swimming area. She swam between the buoys marking the swimming area. The buoy indicated the safe swimming zone. The buoy indicated the safe swimming zone. They tied the boat to a buoy in the harbor. They tied the boat to a buoy in the harbor.
Lighthouse.
She visited the lighthouse on the coastal walk. She visited the lighthouse on the coastal walk. The lighthouse guided ships safely to the harbor. The lighthouse guided ships safely to the harbor. They climbed to the top of the lighthouse for the view. They climbed to the top of the lighthouse for the view.
Cave.
She explored the cave with a torch. She explored the cave with a torch. The cave was dark and filled with interesting rock formations. The cave was dark and filled with interesting rock formations. They discovered ancient paintings inside the cave. They discovered ancient paintings inside the cave.
Waterfall.
She hiked to see the beautiful waterfall. She hiked to see the beautiful waterfall. The waterfall created a refreshing mist in the air. The waterfall created a refreshing mist in the air. They swam in the pool below the waterfall. They swam in the pool below the waterfall.
Valley.
She walked through the valley surrounded by mountains. She walked through the valley surrounded by mountains. The valley was green and fertile. The valley was green and fertile. They set up camp in the valley for the night. They set up camp in the valley for the night.
Peak.
She reached the peak after hours of climbing. She reached the peak after hours of climbing. The peak offered panoramic views of the surrounding area. The peak offered panoramic views of the surrounding area. They celebrated reaching the peak with a group photo. They celebrated reaching the peak with a group photo.
Ridge.
She walked along the ridge with care. She walked along the ridge with care. The ridge provided stunning views on both sides. The ridge provided stunning views on both sides. They followed the ridge to reach the summit. They followed the ridge to reach the summit.
Stream.
She crossed the stream using stepping stones. She crossed the stream using stepping stones. The stream was clear and perfect for drinking. The stream was clear and perfect for drinking. They followed the stream downstream to find the campsite. They followed the stream downstream to find the campsite.
Meadow.
She walked through the wildflower meadow. She walked through the wildflower meadow. The meadow was filled with colorful flowers in spring. The meadow was filled with colorful flowers in spring. They had a picnic in the meadow surrounded by nature. They had a picnic in the meadow surrounded by nature.
Cliff.
She stood at the edge of the cliff looking out to sea. She stood at the edge of the cliff looking out to sea. The cliff was high and offered dramatic views. The cliff was high and offered dramatic views. They watched seabirds nesting on the cliff face. They watched seabirds nesting on the cliff face.
Coast.
She walked along the coast enjoying the sea breeze. She walked along the coast enjoying the sea breeze. The coast was rugged and beautiful. The coast was rugged and beautiful. They explored the coast during their coastal walk. They explored the coast during their coastal walk.
Island.
She visited the small island by boat. She visited the small island by boat. The island was uninhabited and perfect for camping. The island was uninhabited and perfect for camping. They spent the day exploring the island. They spent the day exploring the island.
Peninsula.
She hiked around the peninsula to see all sides. She hiked around the peninsula to see all sides. The peninsula jutted out into the sea. The peninsula jutted out into the sea. They camped on the peninsula with sea views on three sides. They camped on the peninsula with sea views on three sides.
To paddle.
She learned to paddle the kayak efficiently. She learned to paddle the kayak efficiently. They paddled together in rhythm. They paddled together in rhythm. We need to paddle harder to reach the shore. We need to paddle harder to reach the shore.
To navigate.
She learned to navigate using a map and compass. She learned to navigate using a map and compass. They navigated through the dense forest successfully. They navigated through the dense forest successfully. We can navigate by following the trail markers. We can navigate by following the trail markers.
To pitch.
She helped pitch the tent in the designated area. She helped pitch the tent in the designated area. They pitched their tent before it got dark. They pitched their tent before it got dark. We need to pitch the tent on level ground. We need to pitch the tent on level ground.
To pack.
She packed her backpack with essential camping gear. She packed her backpack with essential camping gear. They packed carefully to keep everything organized. They packed carefully to keep everything organized. We should pack light for the hiking trip. We should pack light for the hiking trip.
To explore.
She wanted to explore the new hiking trail. She wanted to explore the new hiking trail. They explored the coastline looking for interesting rock pools. They explored the coastline looking for interesting rock pools. We plan to explore the national park this weekend. We plan to explore the national park this weekend.
To observe.
She learned to observe wildlife without disturbing it. She learned to observe wildlife without disturbing it. They observed the birds through their binoculars. They observed the birds through their binoculars. We should observe the weather before setting off. We should observe the weather before setting off.
To photograph.
She loved to photograph landscapes during her walks. She loved to photograph landscapes during her walks. They photographed the sunset over the mountains. They photographed the sunset over the mountains. We can photograph the wildlife from a safe distance. We can photograph the wildlife from a safe distance.
To pitch a tent.
She learned to pitch a tent quickly and efficiently. She learned to pitch a tent quickly and efficiently. They pitched a tent in a sheltered spot away from the wind. They pitched a tent in a sheltered spot away from the wind. We need to pitch a tent before it gets dark. We need to pitch a tent before it gets dark.
To set up camp.
She helped set up camp before sunset. She helped set up camp before sunset. They set up camp near the river for easy access to water. They set up camp near the river for easy access to water. We will set up camp in the designated camping area. We will set up camp in the designated camping area.
To follow a trail.
She learned to follow a trail using the markers. She learned to follow a trail using the markers. They followed the trail through the forest. They followed the trail through the forest. We should follow the trail to avoid getting lost. We should follow the trail to avoid getting lost.
To get lost.
She was worried they might get lost in the dense forest. She was worried they might get lost in the dense forest. They got lost but found their way back using a compass. They got lost but found their way back using a compass. We won't get lost if we stick to the marked path. We won't get lost if we stick to the marked path.
To find one's way.
She used the map to find her way back to camp. She used the map to find her way back to camp. They found their way by following the river downstream. They found their way by following the river downstream. We can find our way using the landmarks we noted earlier. We can find our way using the landmarks we noted earlier.
To set off.
She set off early in the morning for the long hike. She set off early in the morning for the long hike. They set off on their adventure with excitement. They set off on their adventure with excitement. We will set off at dawn to make the most of the day. We will set off at dawn to make the most of the day.
To head back.
She decided to head back before it got dark. She decided to head back before it got dark. They headed back to the campsite after exploring the cave. They headed back to the campsite after exploring the cave. We should head back now if we want to reach camp before sunset. We should head back now if we want to reach camp before sunset.
To reach.
She was determined to reach the summit before noon. She was determined to reach the summit before noon. They reached the campsite just as it started to rain. They reached the campsite just as it started to rain. We finally reached the waterfall after hours of hiking. We finally reached the waterfall after hours of hiking.
To cross.
She carefully crossed the stream using stepping stones. She carefully crossed the stream using stepping stones. They crossed the bridge to reach the other side of the valley. They crossed the bridge to reach the other side of the valley. We need to cross the river before the water level rises. We need to cross the river before the water level rises.
To climb up.
She began to climb up the steep mountain path. She began to climb up the steep mountain path. They climbed up the rock face using ropes and harnesses. They climbed up the rock face using ropes and harnesses. We will climb up to the ridge for better views. We will climb up to the ridge for better views.
To descend.
She carefully descended the rocky slope. She carefully descended the rocky slope. They descended from the peak using the same route. They descended from the peak using the same route. We need to descend slowly to avoid slipping. We need to descend slowly to avoid slipping.
To rest.
She stopped to rest at the viewpoint. She stopped to rest at the viewpoint. They rested by the stream to regain their energy. They rested by the stream to regain their energy. We should rest here before continuing the climb. We should rest here before continuing the climb.
To take a break.
She decided to take a break after walking for 3 hours. She decided to take a break after walking for 3 hours. They took a break to enjoy the beautiful scenery. They took a break to enjoy the beautiful scenery. We will take a break at the next shelter. We will take a break at the next shelter.
To light a fire.
She learned to light a fire using matches and dry kindling. She learned to light a fire using matches and dry kindling. They lit a fire to keep warm during the cold night. They lit a fire to keep warm during the cold night. We can light a fire in the designated fire pit. We can light a fire in the designated fire pit.
To put out a fire.
She made sure to put out the fire completely before leaving. She made sure to put out the fire completely before leaving. They put out the fire using water and dirt. They put out the fire using water and dirt. We must put out the fire before going to sleep. We must put out the fire before going to sleep.
To cook outdoors.
She loved to cook outdoors over the campfire. She loved to cook outdoors over the campfire. They cooked outdoors using a portable camping stove. They cooked outdoors using a portable camping stove. We will cook outdoors tonight using the barbecue. We will cook outdoors tonight using the barbecue.
To catch fish.
She hoped to catch fish for dinner. She hoped to catch fish for dinner. They caught fish using a rod and bait. They caught fish using a rod and bait. We might catch fish if we're patient. We might catch fish if we're patient.
To cast.
She learned to cast the fishing line into the water. She learned to cast the fishing line into the water. They cast their lines from the riverbank. They cast their lines from the riverbank. We need to cast further out to reach deeper water. We need to cast further out to reach deeper water.
To reel in.
She began to reel in when she felt a bite. She began to reel in when she felt a bite. They reeled in the fish carefully to avoid breaking the line. They reeled in the fish carefully to avoid breaking the line. We should reel in slowly to keep the fish on the hook. We should reel in slowly to keep the fish on the hook.
To launch.
She helped launch the kayak into the water. She helped launch the kayak into the water. They launched the boat from the slipway. They launched the boat from the slipway. We will launch at the designated launch point. We will launch at the designated launch point.
To land.
She managed to land the kayak safely on the beach. She managed to land the kayak safely on the beach. They landed on the small island after paddling for hours. They landed on the small island after paddling for hours. We need to land before the tide goes out. We need to land before the tide goes out.
To anchor.
She dropped the anchor to stop the boat drifting. She dropped the anchor to stop the boat drifting. They anchored the boat in the sheltered bay. They anchored the boat in the sheltered bay. We will anchor here for the night. We will anchor here for the night.
To set up.
She helped set up the camping equipment. She helped set up the camping equipment. They set up the barbecue for the evening meal. They set up the barbecue for the evening meal. We need to set up the tent before it gets dark. We need to set up the tent before it gets dark.
To take down.
She helped take down the tent in the morning. She helped take down the tent in the morning. They took down the camp before leaving. They took down the camp before leaving. We should take down everything and leave no trace. We should take down everything and leave no trace.
To pack up.
She began to pack up her belongings. She began to pack up her belongings. They packed up all the camping gear after the trip. They packed up all the camping gear after the trip. We need to pack up quickly to catch the ferry. We need to pack up quickly to catch the ferry.
To unpack.
She started to unpack when they reached the campsite. She started to unpack when they reached the campsite. They unpacked their backpacks to find the map. They unpacked their backpacks to find the map. We will unpack after we've pitched the tent. We will unpack after we've pitched the tent.
To tie.
She learned to tie secure knots for climbing. She learned to tie secure knots for climbing. They tied the rope to a sturdy tree. They tied the rope to a sturdy tree. We need to tie the boat securely to the dock. We need to tie the boat securely to the dock.
To untie.
She untied the rope from the anchor. She untied the rope from the anchor. They untied the knots before packing the rope. They untied the knots before packing the rope. We should untie the boat before setting sail. We should untie the boat before setting sail.
To adjust.
She adjusted her backpack straps for better comfort. She adjusted her backpack straps for better comfort. They adjusted the tent pegs to make it more stable. They adjusted the tent pegs to make it more stable. We need to adjust the harness before climbing. We need to adjust the harness before climbing.
To tighten.
She tightened the rope to secure the tent. She tightened the rope to secure the tent. They tightened their shoelaces before starting the hike. They tightened their shoelaces before starting the hike. We should tighten the straps on our backpacks. We should tighten the straps on our backpacks.
To loosen.
She loosened her boots to relieve the pressure. She loosened her boots to relieve the pressure. They loosened the knots to release the rope. They loosened the knots to release the rope. We need to loosen the straps a bit for comfort. We need to loosen the straps a bit for comfort.
To check.
She checked the weather forecast before setting off. She checked the weather forecast before setting off. They checked their equipment to make sure everything was ready. They checked their equipment to make sure everything was ready. We should check the map to confirm our location. We should check the map to confirm our location.
To prepare.
She prepared all the camping gear the night before. She prepared all the camping gear the night before. They prepared a meal over the campfire. They prepared a meal over the campfire. We need to prepare for the long hike ahead. We need to prepare for the long hike ahead.
To plan.
She planned the route carefully before the trip. She planned the route carefully before the trip. They planned their camping trip months in advance. They planned their camping trip months in advance. We should plan our stops along the way. We should plan our stops along the way.
To track.
She learned to track animals by following their footprints. She learned to track animals by following their footprints. They tracked the deer through the forest. They tracked the deer through the forest. We can track our progress using GPS. We can track our progress using GPS.
To spot.
She managed to spot an eagle soaring overhead. She managed to spot an eagle soaring overhead. They spotted a deer in the distance. They spotted a deer in the distance. We might spot dolphins if we're lucky. We might spot dolphins if we're lucky.
To identify.
She used a guidebook to identify the bird species. She used a guidebook to identify the bird species. They identified the plant using a field guide. They identified the plant using a field guide. We can identify the tracks by their size and shape. We can identify the tracks by their size and shape.
To record.
She recorded all the wildlife sightings in her notebook. She recorded all the wildlife sightings in her notebook. They recorded their route using a GPS device. They recorded their route using a GPS device. We should record the weather conditions each day. We should record the weather conditions each day.
To document.
She documented her outdoor adventures with photographs. She documented her outdoor adventures with photographs. They documented the different species they encountered. They documented the different species they encountered. We will document the entire journey in our travel journal. We will document the entire journey in our travel journal.
To respect.
She learned to respect nature and leave no trace. She learned to respect nature and leave no trace. They respected the wildlife by keeping their distance. They respected the wildlife by keeping their distance. We must respect the environment and follow the rules. We must respect the environment and follow the rules.
To preserve.
She worked to preserve the natural beauty of the area. She worked to preserve the natural beauty of the area. They preserved the campsite by cleaning up after themselves. They preserved the campsite by cleaning up after themselves. We should preserve these wild spaces for future generations. We should preserve these wild spaces for future generations.
To protect.
She wore sunscreen to protect her skin from the sun. She wore sunscreen to protect her skin from the sun. They protected themselves from insects using repellent. They protected themselves from insects using repellent. We need to protect our equipment from the rain. We need to protect our equipment from the rain.
To stay safe.
She always made sure to stay safe during outdoor activities. She always made sure to stay safe during outdoor activities. They stayed safe by following the safety guidelines. They stayed safe by following the safety guidelines. We must stay safe and be prepared for emergencies. We must stay safe and be prepared for emergencies.
To be prepared.
She made sure to be prepared for any weather conditions. She made sure to be prepared for any weather conditions. They were prepared with all the necessary equipment. They were prepared with all the necessary equipment. We should be prepared for the challenges ahead. We should be prepared for the challenges ahead.
To enjoy.
She loved to enjoy the peace and quiet of nature. She loved to enjoy the peace and quiet of nature. They enjoyed watching the sunset from the mountain top. They enjoyed watching the sunset from the mountain top. We will enjoy this beautiful day outdoors. We will enjoy this beautiful day outdoors.
To appreciate.
She learned to appreciate the beauty of the natural world. She learned to appreciate the beauty of the natural world. They appreciated the stunning views from the summit. They appreciated the stunning views from the summit. We should appreciate these moments in nature. We should appreciate these moments in nature. .
Scuba diving.
She went scuba diving to explore the coral reef. She went scuba diving to explore the coral reef. The scuba diving course taught them how to use the equipment safely. The scuba diving course taught them how to use the equipment safely. They saw amazing marine life during their scuba diving adventure. They saw amazing marine life during their scuba diving adventure.
Sailing.
She learned to sail during her summer holiday. She learned to sail during her summer holiday. The sailing trip took them along the coast. The sailing trip took them along the coast. They enjoyed sailing in the calm waters of the bay. They enjoyed sailing in the calm waters of the bay.
Windsurfing.
She tried windsurfing for the first time at the beach. She tried windsurfing for the first time at the beach. The windsurfing conditions were perfect with steady winds. The windsurfing conditions were perfect with steady winds. They rented windsurfing equipment for the afternoon. They rented windsurfing equipment for the afternoon.
Kitesurfing.
She took up kitesurfing as a new water sport. She took up kitesurfing as a new water sport. The kitesurfing lesson taught her how to control the kite. The kitesurfing lesson taught her how to control the kite. They watched the kitesurfing competition from the beach. They watched the kitesurfing competition from the beach.
Paragliding.
She went paragliding from the mountain top. She went paragliding from the mountain top. The paragliding experience offered breathtaking views. The paragliding experience offered breathtaking views. They took a tandem paragliding flight with an instructor. They took a tandem paragliding flight with an instructor.
Skiing.
She went skiing in the Alps every winter. She went skiing in the Alps every winter. The skiing slopes were well maintained and safe. The skiing slopes were well maintained and safe. They learned skiing techniques from a professional instructor. They learned skiing techniques from a professional instructor.
Snowboarding.
She preferred snowboarding to skiing. She preferred snowboarding to skiing. The snowboarding park had jumps and rails for tricks. The snowboarding park had jumps and rails for tricks. They rented snowboarding equipment at the resort. They rented snowboarding equipment at the resort.
Ice skating.
She went ice skating on the frozen lake. She went ice skating on the frozen lake. The ice skating rink was open for public sessions. The ice skating rink was open for public sessions. They learned ice skating during the winter holidays. They learned ice skating during the winter holidays.
Sledging.
She went sledging down the snowy hill. She went sledging down the snowy hill. The sledging was great fun for the whole family. The sledging was great fun for the whole family. They built a sledging run in the garden after the snowfall. They built a sledging run in the garden after the snowfall.
Horse riding.
She went horse riding through the countryside. She went horse riding through the countryside. The horse riding trail took them through beautiful landscapes. The horse riding trail took them through beautiful landscapes. They took horse riding lessons at the local stables. They took horse riding lessons at the local stables.
Mountain biking.
She enjoyed mountain biking on challenging trails. She enjoyed mountain biking on challenging trails. The mountain biking route was steep and technical. The mountain biking route was steep and technical. They wore protective gear for mountain biking. They wore protective gear for mountain biking.
To break camp.
She helped break camp early in the morning. She helped break camp early in the morning. They broke camp and packed everything away carefully. They broke camp and packed everything away carefully. We need to break camp before sunrise to avoid the heat. We need to break camp before sunrise to avoid the heat.